Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Daily Record Hotline Live with myself, Keith Jackson. After Celtic opened up a 5-point lead over Rangers at the top of the table at lunchtime today, we're about to take a very deep dive into another Old Firm demolition derby. And I'm joined by our very own Gavin Berry, to talk us through his version of the events at Celtic Park. We'll also be getting the no-holds-barred verdicts of our reporting team on the ground at Celtic Park. That's Craig, Swan and Andy Newport. And we'll catch up with former top ref Des Roche to assess the performance of John Beaton and a potential red card for Mohamed Diomande. Guys, let's go to Celtic Park first. Craig, what was your opinion of that? It seemed to me like an absolute battering, and Rangers were very, very fortunate they got out of there with only 3 goals against.
Yeah, Celtic could have scored many more. It was an interesting game in the sense that, Rangers had to try and make a fast start. They tried to press on to Celtic. They actually started okay, kind of stifled Celtic in, the very, very early stages. But as soon as Celtic broke it for the first time, got away, Kyogo scored a goal, which was obviously ruled out for offside. As soon as that happened, Celtic looked as though they could just get through it well. And by the time, to me, as soon as Celtic got their noses in front, the game was dead. Right, Rangers players just, whether some of them have been, I know it's a new squad, but whether some people within that team have just been through this experience once too often, that the first goal went in and you could not see any other outcome.
But isn't that the worrying thing from a Rangers perspective, Andy? That I think Craig's right. They did look as soon as Kyogo scores the goal, VAR chops off. Rangers went into their shell. They looked terrified. It was as if they looked around saying they can cut through us at will here, and whatever it was that they set out to achieve, and I thought they actually tactically were spot on in the first 10 minutes. Isn't that a huge concern that it just took that to completely rattle them? They looked as if they hit the panic button at that stage.
Absolutely. I mean, we've all spoken about the last couple of years about when the results have went like this. Oh, it's the scar tissue. This team has been through this too many times before. But, half the guys out there knew this as well. 5, 6 of them was a first derby. So, yeah, I don't think you can point that. I think what you're looking at is a Rangers team really short in leaders. We've questioned James Tavernier so many times, and again, he was one of the guys that started well. He was the one that set up those 2 early chances they had for Cyril Dessers and Ravi Matondo, and you're thinking he looked like for the first time in a while was starting a derby well. But as you say, he's cut out. He's doing the Borna Barisic track this time. It's him sleeping at the back post rather than Big Borna who's up to the left. So, this is a team that is just devoid of leadership, and it was utterly exposed by a Celtic team that, didn't start the game well. There was, the odd grumble around the place as the first sort of 10 minutes, Carter Vickers put the ball out of play, Scales gave the ball away. And you're thinking this is an opportunity. If Rangers can be at it, can be clinical, they could turn the crowd against Celtic a wee bit. But no, as soon as Celtic got that, with a blood, they were away and they were well clear. So, I think you've got to give Celtic huge credit for just the way that they absolutely blew Rangers off the park today. But from a Rangers point of view, you're looking at it and going, well, what are we, 4 games in, 5 points behind? This season can get really messy really quick.
Yeah. Can I just add something, Keith, just before you go on, just to something Andy said? I don't think Celtic were massively uncomfortable in that first 10 minutes in the terms of they've seen that in the sense of, okay, let the storm blow itself out. There's only so long Rangers can press at this pace. We will pick our moment and we will get in. That seemed to me to be the way. And as soon as they did, as Andy suggested, guys just were rocked back. As soon as that happened, they don't panic in that situation. Celtic, I would imagine they were almost encouraged by the fact that Rangers were pressing on so high because they knew they've been talking about it post-match. All the Celtic people about the transitions, how quickly they could move it on. And if they'd have taken more care of that today, Celtic could have scored 6 or 7 goals.
I completely agree, Swanee, but I don't think it's a coincidence, by the way, that the goal didn't stand, but it was the first time that Callum McGregor got on the turn, got a bit of space, and every time he does that in one of these matches, something happens at the end. I think it's a beautiful pass that he played through for Kuhn. Kuhn sets up Kyogo. Yes, it's called back. VAR rubs it out, but that was the danger. That's what Rangers were trying. That's what they were all set up to try and achieve, was to stop.
This is the thing, Keith. 10 minutes? 10 minutes. Like, these type of things have to be sustained for. You have to come up with a plan that can be sustained throughout the game. It's almost like Celtic Rangers out for 10 minutes. Like, oh, that was a good start. Celtic are just waiting to pick that off. Callum McGregor's far too clever and far too good for them. I suppose Celtic will just get better players. Callum McGregor's just a better player, and whatever he's spoken about it before previous Old Firm games, whatever way it's set up, whatever way the game's set up, we as a team will try to find our way to pick out of it and pick our way out. And it's almost like they spend 10 minutes thinking, right, okay, how do we get around about this? Right, this is the way. Bang. And that's what happens.
Yeah, it's like boxing, isn't it? It's like
feeling
each other out.
I was just going to say, so I've just written my analysis piece in the game today. Whatever Rangers have tried over the last 3 years probably, if you want to say, since they won the title and Celtic have been on top, they've tried numerous different ways to try and get hold of Callum McGregor, and every one of them's failed. Whether it be Todd Cantwell, putting Tom Lawrence on it today, it was Daizen Maeda, but he always finds a way, and that's a sign of an absolutely quality player. But Rangers, doesn't matter what they do, they can't get near the guy, and everything runs through him. And you're absolutely right. As soon as he gets that, Daizen Maeda just drops off and just doesn't track the run, they were away, and it led to a goal. Obviously, the very thinnest of margins, it's chopped off for offside. But it's remarkable that they still haven't been able to come up with a solution for it. Whether it's double marking them, whether it's just sitting deep, but whatever it is, they can't work out how to stop Callum McGregor's influence in the team. And again, you've got to say it's his absolute credit of just how intelligent a footballer he is. Yeah,
I think the one thing that you might want to look at, Andy, from a Rangers perspective, is did he pick the right guy to go on him? Because if I look at Big Dujon Sterling, and I say, I don't care what you do today, big man. I don't care what you do with the ball at your feet. I don't care about your I don't care about anything. Just go out there and nullify him. Just get all over him like a rash. Is that not? I know it's totally sacrificing a player from your team.
Yeah.
But is that not what Rangers need to think about doing in these matches?
But then I think you also need to have somebody in that. That's why it's such a key position, because you've got twin duties. You've got to be the guy who stops McGregor getting on that pivot position, being the guy who's a linchpin for their team. But when you pick up position, you also need to be the type of player that's going to be able to hurt Celtic. And that's not really Dujon Sterling's skill set.
Sorry to break in, boys. The other thing is Rangers don't have a player good enough in their squad to do it.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Callum McGregor is too intelligent, too clever, and too good for any one of them in the midfield. He will find a way to get away from them.
Yeah.
Rangers' problem is a player.
And the trouble is that even if you do then go and nullify Callum McGregor, if you find a way, then you get Hitati, you've got Paulo Bernardo today, who was terrific in the first half.
He was really good, wasn't he?
You're bringing on £11 million signing and Engels. So, Celtic, they've got so many options. That's why when we came into the game, you're thinking, well, how can Celtic win the game? They've got 3, 4, 5 different players that could all potentially be match winners for them. How many match winners do Rangers have? Nowhere near enough. And that's why you continually get these results. But now, so it's 11 wins for Celtic in the last 16 derbies, only 2 for Rangers. They've won. They scored the first goal in the last 6 derbies in a row. This is all signs that a team that have got ability to hurt you from all over the pitch. Where Rangers just don't have anywhere near enough options in their armory to cause Celtic trouble. So,
here's
Craig's absolutely right. It's just this isn't a surprise. This is a. No one came walking out this ground today thinking that this is in any way a surprising result.
No. The only surprise was that Celtic didn't score more goals.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
My question to you guys, Philip Clement, that's 5 goals he's had now, and he hasn't picked up a single victory in this particular fixture. Not many survive runs like that. Now, he has been given a new contract, but where are we with Philip Clement? I'll put my hands up and say I'm a Clement sceptic. I'm just not sure what it is that he's trying to achieve. And I looked at that performance today, and I think, if anything, Rangers look to me to be a side in regression rather than one in transition and moving forward in a specific direction. Guys, help me on this.
I find it hard to point too many fingers of blame at him right now for the state that the club's in general. I think there's the
Even
issues
though the team's getting worse, Sandy.
Yeah, but whose fault was it for that? He's had to sell players before he can buy players. Whose fault is it that they've been dealt with a list of big money earners that have struggled to get off the wage bill? Whose fault is it that they've have let so many players that had some value in it walk out the door for free. These are all issues that pre-existed before Clement came in. He's having to pick up the pieces. Yeah, of course, he's not been perfect. He's not made mistakes, but I think it's difficult. I think any manager coming in right now would find it difficult to operate under the circumstances he finds himself in right now.
Has he not made the situation worse for himself though? With the the kind of fallout that he had with Cantwell. Cantwell, to me, undoubtedly the most talented player. Now, I accept that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the answer in an Oak Firm game, because he wasn't previously. But he's limited his own options. He's made some curious decisions, and I still don't see any defined style of play from this Rangers team.
If he's weeding out guys that he thinks are bad apples or aren't part of the future, I don't think there's anything particularly bad in that. I tend to agree quite a lot with what Andy said in terms of what he's been left with. You would probably expect him maybe to come up with a couple of better ideas or better plans, or maybe even sign a wee bit better in the free market if he could have. What I would be concerned about is, and from a Rangers point of view, if you were a Rangers fan, would be there was a lot of talk after the game today about statistics and possession stats and shots and all of that stuff, and
yeah,
that's not cutting it. I'm afraid we can see a game where on ice. You don't need stuff like that. That stuff's irrelevant. A team's turning up and getting the ball. You build your possession stats, percentages, because they're two up and they're sitting off the game and they're waiting to counter you. That's what happens. So when you start doing that road of stats and all that, it's not a good thing.
No, that's never a good thing.
If we look back to when Michael Beale was sacked and Rangers were on the lookout for a successor, let's not forget, there weren't many better alternatives in terms of on paper and a CV. This is a guy who had won titles in Belgium, and he did go and land the Monaco job. He was managing in the top French division. He's not like he's a complete mug. So if you bin him in October and this is what the club are trying to do, they're trying to break this cycle of just sacking who comes in. Will they do a better job? Look at the money that Celtic have got in the bank. They're operating with a manager who's been at the very top level and is an excellent manager. So what is the next guy going to do? If, as Andy touched on, all these other issues aren't resolved, Rangers don't have a chief executive right now. As Andy says, they're playing outside of their own stadium. So there are other issues that he has to deal with. But Craig's right. If you start rambling on and trotting out, stats, that's not going to wash. You can see the anger amongst the fans already. And
the other thing, Gavin, I would say, and I think I said this on Hotline Live about a month ago, that I think we could pretty much see this situation coming for Rangers. It was going to take time. It's going to take time to transition that squad. It's not going to happen quickly. And I think most people accept that there's a fair chance that Rangers are going to be out of the Champions League and lose this first game against Celtic and be 3, possibly more points behind. That's how it's transpired. That's not anything that no one expected. As Andy said, people are walking out the ground today expecting this result, the result that came. The state of play where Rangers are just now is where people expected them to be.
Yeah, but you're right. But that only washes for so long.
That's the problem, Gavin. Only washes for so long. If Rangers drop points in their next game at Tannadice and fall 7, does that the clamour begin? Clement has to go, and then it happens, and we go back to Rangers. Go back to the situation that you just described. Right back to the start again. When new manager coming in thinking, well, I'm not having Jeffrey and I'm not having him, and then you just start again.
Listen,
I don't think. Sorry, Gavin. I don't think Philippe Clement's job is under any sort of risk right now. They've obviously just got a fortnight, 3 weeks since they gave him a new deal.
Yeah. Speaking
to people at the club over the summer, they made clear that they want to get out of this. What's the phrase John Bennett used? Rinse and repeat of sacking managers. Yeah. This isn't going to happen. They're going to have to show a bit of patience. The board, the punters, Clement himself. This is not.
Good luck.
But this is not an easy fix. They're aware of that. They know there's probably going to be more pain in store before it gets better. Yeah. That's if it does get better. But I think right now you're thinking, right, well, they're stuck with Philippe Clement for the time being, and we need to find out a way to work with him and get the best out of him. But he said he'll be getting sacked anytime soon.
Andy, you could flip it. How long do you think he's going to want to be the man in that line of fire? Because it's only going to increase on him.
He's just signed a 4-year deal. He's just signed a 4-year deal, Gavin. Unless
He's
he's
happy whatever happens. Don't worry about it.
That just gets you a bigger payoff.
Big Phil sorted.
Keith, when we spoke on Hotline Live a few weeks ago after John Bennett broke that lengthy silence to issue the stadium update, he spoke of all the issues. Andy, I think that's when he touched on breaking that cycle of sacking the managers. I think you maybe said, Keith, or somebody said at the time that reading between the lines of that John Bennett interview, he was almost writing this season off. I mean, there was almost an accept. Okay, he was saying Rangers need to win. That was the message. He said, okay, Rangers need to win trophies and all that. But all the other sound bites were almost saying, was as if they were writing the season off. So if that is what they're thinking, and that is their approach to this campaign, as Andy says, a bit more pain along the way, then that's fine. But it'll be a real test of that strategy and their patience when the heat is really on. As Craig says, if they go to Tannadice and lose, they could be 8 points behind Aberdeen and Celtic by the time they go to Tannadice. That game, that's a Sunday game. They've also got Dundee at home, the Premier Sports Cup. Okay, they should be back at Ibrox for that game. But if anything goes wrong in any of those games, and even then, if they get through against Dundee, at some point you would assume they're going to have to play Celtic in that tournament again, and you're back to having,
And by the way, you've got Spurs and Man United, so good luck with that.
Exactly. I know, it just feels as if everything is conspiring against them just now. That Europa League draw was just another one. Here we go.
Well, that's what happened with Van Bronckhorst, wasn't it? He was not equipped for that Champions League campaign. Yeah. He didn't have the manpower that he needed for it, and he was decimated. He was absolutely wiped out. He was embarrassed. The results were horrendous, and he didn't survive. So I know what Andy's saying.
And it impacted, it bled into the league form because the confidence.
Yeah, of course it did. The confidence was shot. Yeah. Right, so, finally on Rangers, before we concentrate Celtic for a bit, because let's not forget what a great performance that was. Andy, the fans are reacting badly. Do you think, you said there that they'll need to show a bit of patience. Do you think that will happen? Do you think they'll give him the time and the patience? Do you think that maybe the board or the sort of human barrier between the fans and Clement for the time being, that they're going to cop the whack for this?
We asked Clement after the game, is patience required? And he says, what other choice do we have? And to be honest, in that sense, he's right, because what is the other choice? You sack him. So he's just made, 8-9 signings this summer. So you've got a new man who comes in, wants to implement his own team, his own style, his own philosophy. We've seen the impact of swapping the managers has had about on the way the injury situation at the club is played out. They've blamed that, just the constant changing of managers, changing of styles, training systems, how that's impacted that. So you're going to bring in, the new man's going to want money as well, to spend. There's no money to spend, really. So this, I just think you get yourself into that sort of doom spiral. They say they want to get them out of that. So listen. And the wonderful world of Old Firm, nothing surprised you. If he was to be out in his ear by the end of October, would it surprise me? Probably not. But I don't expect that, on the basis that I think there's an awareness in the club that they have to somehow just sort of try and weather this storm. And as I say, I don't think it will be pretty. I think there's going to be a few nasty results to come, probably, especially in Europe, most likely.
One thing I'll throw at you here then, Andy, because you mentioned that they've got no leaders. They had a captain today that looked to me as if he chucked it. His body language was all over the shop. I noticed that he didn't come in to speak to the reporters, to you guys after the game. It was left to Jack Butland. And I was told over the summer that Clement had this idea that he wanted to absolutely refresh the leadership group because of a litany of performances and results just like that one today. And yet there's James Tavernier still wearing the armband and playing a shadow of himself. Is that a change that has to be now considered for Rangers to move forward? They need to actually find a way of getting him out.
I definitely think he's been well short of his best this summer. That's, whether that's not feeling it, or if it's just a general decline. He's 31, 32 now.
Same age as Callum McGregor.
I think, but everyone ages differently as well. No, I think there's been an awareness around the club that leadership's an issue. They've tried to change that this summer. They've obviously got rid of Goldstein, they've got rid of Barisic, they've got rid of John Lundstrom, who are part of that leadership group. But, look who they've brought in. It's been a lot of young guys. You've got Robin Proper, one of the more serious. And he looked shell-shocked by what was going on.
He was
about
out his depth today.
Yeah, absolutely. Vaclav Cherny again, 26-year-old Czech international, anonymous today. So the senior guys that they've brought in to try and replace that leadership haven't yet stood up. And I mean, it was striking for me that the most assured, composed-looking guy in the pitch for Rangers was Connor Barron. So we're talking about a 21-year-old for Aberdeen on a free transfer. That's the guy that they're looking to be the sort of pillar of strength in the middle of the park for them. I think that sums up all Rangers' issues right now. From
a Celtic perspective, Craig, though, I mean, Brendan Rodgers wasn't in a great position this time 12 months ago. All has been forgotten. That's been everything that's the previous history, the Leicester City thing. It's all been scrubbed from the records, hasn't it? Because there is a feeling that he's reconnected. He has personally reconnected with the sport. There's no doubt about that. But his team, having struggled a little bit, perhaps to follow on from the Postecoglou era, they are now looking. I thought today's performance was as good as anything that I saw under Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, Celtic they've really come on. I mean, Brendan Rodgers has referenced it quite a lot, that it took maybe the first 6 months of last season to bed the ideas in that he was trying to put across. He saw signs of it in the last 3 months of the season, then all the way through pre-season, and then Celtic have just picked it up this season as well. They're so assured, they're so clinical. I was fascinated listening. You don't want to go into some sort of tactical deep dive, but it was interesting listening to Callum McGregor last week after the game, after Celtic's win at St Mirren, talking about the time it took to learn the positions, the angles, the passes. It's clearly so intricate, and so everything has to be on point for it to work. Mm-hmm. The areas to receive it, the angle to make to take the pass, where we need to be at that time. He says it takes new boys time to really get to grips with that. It just shows you how detailed the whole thing is. This isn't just hear 'em, scare 'em. This is so detailed, so planned, and when it works, like you said, Keith, like it did today, the way Celtic were able, whether they were forcing the issue or whether they were standing off and picking their moments, it was so clinical. And the only thing you would say against Celtic today, the one tiny criticism you would have is the final pass just let them down now and again. There was a couple of times Daizen Maeda got in, should have squared for a goal. Yeah. At Rio attack, he's put Kyogo away, and he's been trying to be too cute with the finish. They just looked so good, and you also have to acknowledge in that team. That's obviously not Paisley last week because the deal was going through, but everybody talked about how influential Matt O'Reilly was, and Matt O'Reilly,
I was going to say,
massive influence on Celtic. There's a 25 million guy walked out the door. You wouldn't even have noticed it today. Paolo Bernardo was terrific. Rio Atati was terrific. And then you bring on, there's a £30 million bench.
Incredible. I was right about that. The most expensive bench in Celtic's history.
I mean, that just shows you that what Celtic can do and where they can go with this team. And I think there's still quality that can be added. There's still areas where they can get better. Of course there is if they want to achieve in the Champions League, but I think they should really be looking at that Champions League this year and feeling like they've got a chance to make an impact, especially since, we've all been in the movie before. Oh, that looks like not a bad draw. And it comes next. And it's very stupid for people to go, oh, well, it's only Slovan Bratislava and it's only Young Boys Bern, because these teams like that have come to Celtic Park and won. Bodo came here and hammered Celtic. Copenhagen came here and hammered Celtic. So it's not easy, but I think there's a cohesion and a fluidity and now a depth about Celtic that can make a real impact in the Champions League. But just going back to today, they were head and shoulders above Rangers. Rangers had a couple of chances early doors, which they really should have taken, but that clinical edge is just there.
Celtic, I thought, were a bit ragged at the start of the second half as well for a 5-minute period, but they kind of just eased their way back into it. And the one thing I'll let you guys get up the road, but is this season over in terms of this league title? I know it's 5 points, But as Andy said, it's only 4 games. Rangers are 5 points behind. Aberdeen are 5 points ahead of Rangers. In terms of the old firms fighting for domestic dominance, is that done and dusted already? I would go as far as to say I think we all had to call it before a ball was kicked. So, I tipped Celtic. Couldn't have tipped them any stronger. I've tipped them to break the 100 points barrier this season. But is that now, does that kind of domination in today's match, does that just prove that there's not going to be a realistic title challenge this season?
Listen, we have that everywhere. I was, because I was doing the game today, I actually took a good interest in English football yesterday, and Arsenal dropped points at home to Brighton, and everybody's already gone, that's it, done. Manchester City have beat West Ham, that's it. You can't afford to drop a single point. So that is
let's not forget Liverpool, lads.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, Celtic should go on and win it. Of course they should, but I suppose the thing for Celtic is it's a totally different setup now. They're in a completely different place as they were in 12 months ago. Celtic were 8 points clear at one point last year, and ended up behind at one point. Now, are you asking me, do I see the current Celtic team, that same thing happening again? No, it's completely different. But that's just going to
get stronger.
That's just there as a wee warning that they'll continue to push on, and I think it'd be a miracle if Rangers or anyone else was to overhaul Celtic. I just can't see it.
Andy, your view?
More points than Rangers are this season? No. It's Celtic's already. It's Celtic's title to lose, so I would expect them to go on and grow from strength to strength here. Celtic are only going to get stronger, but there's no evidence so far that Rangers are going to make vast improvements in the next few months that take Celtic.
Right, boys, we'll let you go up the road for your Sunday roast.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for joining us. Now, cheers, Andy. I should say, guys, if you're watching at home, please get in touch through our social medias, get your points, join the debate. We've had quite a few comments, Gav, as you can imagine, after a match like that. And I think you and I should probably address one or two of them. Let me start you with this one, Gav. We've got Kenny Wilson. Says, Maeda must be a nightmare to play against. He's playing the best football of his career just now. I wonder what excuses our regulars will come out with after that absolute drubbing. Maeda was good, wasn't he?
Yes, he's a bit of he kind of doesn't quite get the credit. He's the unsung hero, isn't he? When you think of the signings that Ange Postecoglou brought in from the J League, Kyogo obviously with his goals, another one today, especially against Rangers, got a great record in the derby, and obviously Hatate as well. They seem to, out of the three, those two get most of the headlines, but he must be a manager's dream. The shift that he puts in, it's just unbelievable.
It's like having three players in one, isn't it? I mean, at one point in the second half where he must have darted back about, 60, 70 yards or something to break up a Rangers attack. And he's just, I think that James Tavernier has nightmares about him before the game. I think he looks terrified every time he steps onto a park against them.
It was like we were touching on earlier. I think Andy was saying, or you were saying, talking about, been scarred by this fixture. I think that's part of the problem. There's so many players who are scarred by it, and James Tavernier in particular, and just by Maeda. Not just the fixture itself, but Maeda.
Yeah. I mean, what about that point we were discussing earlier? Is it time to take Tavernier out the firing line? And, if Butland is the guy who had to front up and speak to the press after that game today, give him the armband, let Dujon Sterling go and see if he can make the right back position his own. Is that something we should be considering now? Because Tavernier today, he looked like a player who didn't believe for a second that Rangers could get back into that match.
Well, yeah, because the problem is Philip come on, and even going back, other Rangers managers before him, Beale before him, it's they're doing the same thing over and over again, and it's the same outcome. We spoke on the hotline about that, the hotline live about this last week, Keith, and looking at the Old Firm fixture more generally, the great thing about it was its unpredictability, and now it is just so predictable, and that is, I mean, if you think of people even tuning in from England who don't maybe have an interest in Rangers Celtic, but just want to watch the Old Firm derby because they have over the years, they'll be, turning it on now and saying, oh God, 3-0 Celtic again, or it's 4-0 or 4-1 or whatever the score is, because there's just nothing unpredictable. And that's a sad thing, looking at it more generally, because even when
wasn't that a bigger gap between them last season in these games? That is
no, there wasn't.
I think Celtic have really put the foot down
Yeah.
over the summer. It's certainly from the last couple of days of the transfer window there. But everything's clicking with Brendan Rodgers. Rangers just look as if, I'm telling you, Gav, they look to me like a team with absolutely no direction. There's Joe Graham. Lacking a true striker was the downfall with the chances created. In the end, truly well beaten by an informed Celtic and sleeping Gers defence, not looking forward to Europe. I'll bet he's not. I mean, that is going to be an issue.
Oh, no, it is. I mean, Ange Postecoglou, if you thought, the only saving grace I was thinking when the draw was made is that a lot of the time English teams don't take the Europa League as seriously, certainly not as seriously as the Champions League. But if you thought Ange Postecoglou was going to do that, there's no chance. Now, the other thing is with Man U result today, did it end up 2-0 Liverpool? I'm not sure. It was 2-0 last I checked, I thought, to Liverpool. How did that one?
It was. I don't know. I've not been able to see it yet.
Anyway, Liverpool are winning.
But of course, Liverpool won that one. Of course they did, Gav.
But what I was going to say is if Man U are dropping out of the kind of Premier League race, around about that time, Europa League could then become more of a priority for them. So,
Ten Hag needs to do something, doesn't he?
So in terms of marketing, it was a dream draw because the Europa League's a hard sell when you're not in Champions League. But they could price the tickets a bit higher because you've got a bit of glamour there. You've got that Spurs game, but from Phil Clement's point of view, absolute nightmare. Keith, I should just say, we were talking earlier, about that reaction and the pressure Phil Clement will be under after today's result. Just as we've been on here, there's videos surfacing. We've just put a story out about it now, but he's been involved in an angry, or he has been confronted, certainly by angry fans at the front door at Ibrox. When the buses come back, it looks as if he may well have been getting into an argument with some of them.
That's starting to sound like Pedro in the bush.
No, sorry, that's exactly what I was thinking as I was looking at it. It had that feel about it. I mean, there's a picture of him and there's fans around him saying he's attempting to address them, but they were certainly angry, and you can only imagine that's going to build.
There you go, Gav. As if by magic, Dennis Bruce has written in to say after the Ross County result, Clement claimed that Rangers would stun Celtic. Did he? I'm not sure they did. Did he use that? He certainly wouldn't use that word.
I don't think he said they were going for the win. But then, listen, what manager's going to say when they're asked? What are they going to say? We're going to lose.
His credibility must now be hanging by a thread after the Old Firm result. Well, judging by what you're telling us there, Gav, that does seem to be the case. Here's Gordon Ashley. So what's the excuse this time? The referee, bad luck, the weather. They were outclassed by a bigger, more successful club. Celtic v Aberdeen is the big match in Scotland now.
Well, it definitely wasn't the referee. It definitely wasn't the referee, that's for sure, because there were no major decisions. And I think, as we spoke about earlier, Jackson, Keith, before we went on air.
Jackson. Sorry, Berry.
That's my son's name. Sorry, I'm just so used to it. Sorry. I think actually the referee's performance had a lot to do with the manner of the Rangers' performance and the lack of fight, because there was just nothing there from them, and they didn't even have.
It was easy. It's an easy game for John Beaton because Rangers just crawled into their shell and took a battering, and that was it.
Exactly. They didn't even have it in them to get angry and throw a few tackles out. They weren't even angry enough to go and.
There was one incident which we'll discuss. I caught up with Des Roach earlier after the game. There was one potential red card incident I thought with Diamandi. I thought he was quite lucky. Probably yellow card was the right decision in the clash with Alistair Johnson. I thought Diamandi led with an arm into that, but probably a booking was right. But then when he in the second half, about 50 minutes in, he was fouled. He won the foul and then had a right moan up at John Beaton. I think he was trying to get a Celtic player booked. Now, given the new guidance for this season, I thought he was quite lucky he didn't get a second yellow at that point. Yeah.
But what does that say that it would be a standing off for that, for mouthing off?
Exactly.
You're 2-0 down or you're losing and your rivals are the dominant team. You're going to get a red card. It's probably going to because you've lost the rag and you've gone in late on Sunday. But I mean, they didn't even have that because there's no fight.
And bring back John Lundstrom. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. His problem was that he did it when they just got back into the game. It's 2-0 down, and you've got no hope of getting back in. You might get frustrated and go one, but that was how senseless his was.
Ian Urquhart writes in to say, at 69 years old, I've never been so ashamed to wear a Rangers top. Could be part of the problem. At 69 years old, you shouldn't be wearing football shirts, Ian. But that aside, team selection all wrong. Barry Ferguson for manager now. Forget the league. Barry Ferguson for manager, Gav.
He would certainly rattle a few cages. I don't know about manager, but listen, there's an argument to be made for, I suppose, he would probably be doing the kind of role that you're asking Alex Ray to do now. He got booking as well, didn't he? So,
he did.
Man that wears his heart on his sleeve, that's what Barry Ferguson would be doing. So, but listen, if Alex Ray wasn't there, there's, I think, having Barry Ferguson in the club in more than an ambassadorial role, there's certainly a shout to be said for that. He said he's never been so ashamed to wear a Rangers top. Look, there are better teams that have taken heavier beatings at Rangers. At Celtic Park. There are teams who have, even Walter Smith's Rangers lost 3-0 there, didn't they, on one occasion? And Graham Souness. So you can lose. The problem is,
it's the old cliche. It's the manner of how you lose.
And it's because, if you think back to Graham Souness or Walter Smith taking a beating, at Parkhead when they were in charge, it would be in isolation. Probably would be a bit of a freak, whereas the problem is Philip Clement's losing every game now apart from the 3-3 draw at Ibrox, so he's getting beaten repeatedly and he's not coming up with one. That's what I was saying, Keith, earlier when I was talking about the unpredictability about this Old Firm fixture over the years. Even when Celtic were in the doldrums in the 90s,
they could turn out a big result.
Throw one in, right? It might not have a bearing on it, and quite often it was actually, I think a couple of seasons running, they maybe went to Ibrox and won like the first derby. I remember a 2-0 win. I think maybe under Tommy Burns. When Lou McCarry was in charge, I know he claims the credit. I think it was maybe caretaker manager. I mentioned this last week. He got a 2-1 win at Ibrox. They pulled out results. Whereas now you just get
a pattern of complete and utter dominance. Jimmy Mack, who I'm going to guess a Rangers fan. Clement is a sham. He's another Beale, all mouth and no action. Bennett wanted a yes man. The club now desperately needs Dave King again. Well, Dave King is the answer. So Barry Ferguson for manager, Dave King for chairman. Does that sort it all, Gav? Is that the solution?
I'm not quite so sure. I mean, Dave King did a lot of good work in getting Rangers back to where they wanted to be, but I'm not sure if going back there would be the solution. But having said that, Keith, last week there was a story that came out that American investors were considering, for Rangers.
I was on holiday, Gav, but I did hear about this. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it was in City AM. Well, it was interesting, and I think that was the thing. I think when Rangers fans read it, it piqued their interest a bit because that is what Rangers need just now. Whether they need American investors, I'm not so sure. You've got to be careful.
Fresh ideas.
But they need fresh ideas, and they need money. They need money. But where are they going to get it from? That's the problem. So it's all right shouting up and down, and we're blaming Clement, but they need money. They need to get money from somewhere to close that gap.
It certainly won't be from Dave King. I guarantee you that. Right, Gordon Henry, like most Rangers fans, I'm not surprised. I shudder to think how we'll fare against much better teams like Man United and Tottenham. Our new centre half and left back are woeful. I think he's got a point about Robin Tropper. I think he looked absolutely terrified by that today.
And that's what you have to wonder sometimes. Okay, I know it was England's League One, but Scott Wright leaves, absolute whipping boy, leaves and scores for Birmingham. Yes, and I saw somebody.
Couldn't make it up.
And I saw somebody. I saw when the news came through. I saw somebody saying, "God, maybe we're the problem. Maybe Rangers are the problem." Rangers fans in there thinking. I mean, you think of this guy. I mean, he was captain of FC 20, who got into the Champions League, and yet you come and they look as if they've never seen a football before. You think,
how can that one for the first goal where he actually tries to head it while he's lying on the ground?
Oh, I know. And then I mean, Jack Butland was all over the place.
Jack Butland, by the way, I think that's
he's another one.
What about the size of the gap he leaves for Kyogo's goal? I mean,
Since
he's left him. Kyogo didn't even need to put power on it. He could pass it into the net from 30 yards because Butland's positioning was all wrong. And he'll not get the flag.
No, I don't think he's had a good. I think questions need to be asked of him. I don't think he's had a good game since he was dropped from or since he was left out of the England squad when everybody expected him to get called up. But as bad as he was for that goal as well, I mean, also that goal, Robin, proper. It just stopped. It just seemed to stop.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about somebody who was having a good game. I think somebody who we all acknowledge had a decent game today was referee John Beaton.
Yeah.
That's why just after the final whistle, I caught up with ex-referee Des Roach to get his opinion on the decisions making from the men in the middle during the match. Des, well, just another peaceful Sunday, really. I don't know what all the fuss was about. But in terms of the refereeing performance for John Beaton, that actually was quite a stress-free 90 minutes by Old Firm standards, I thought.
Yeah, well, you say stress-free. 90 minutes are full of stress if you're doing an Old Firm derby. As Steve, who we do the podcast with, says, my granny could make anything easy. You don't make it easy. You've got to manage it. And I thought, to be fair, John managed that game very, very well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on John Beaton in these Old Firm games because of some of the past stuff. Because I thought, actually, if I'm honest, I thought Brendan Rodgers was a little bit over the line with him last season after the game at Tynecastle when he seemed to single him out in much the same way that Rangers had previously singled out Willie Collum. And it's almost as if there's something being said in between the lines. And I think that puts a guy like John Beaton in, a really precarious position going into these kind of games. As you said, I'm saying it's stress-free, but I mean, that can't be easy for him, knowing that, he's almost been painted as the pantomime villain before these games have even started.
Listen, it doesn't matter. See, when that game starts, 50% of the population of this country are going to disagree whatever decision you give.
Every single decision.
Absolutely. But John's professional. John has massive experience within the domestic game and European games. I know John, not terribly well, but I know John. Mm-hmm. He's got a very, very strong character, and that wouldn't play any attention on him. And he will do that job to the best of his ability and his professional ability to do that game today, which he done. He absolutely done.
No, I thought it was very good. I mean, in terms of Celtic's the opening goal, which was then chalked off by VAR, I think that looked like the correct decision as well. I don't think anybody can really have any complaints with the way the officials controlled the game today. Although I will bring up one. That was in a couple of incidents with Diamondi, and I think Diamondi seemed to lose the plot. And you'll know what that's like. Because when a player has kind of lost his head in the atmosphere, I thought Diamondi was guilty of it. I thought I was quite surprised, or maybe you'll correct me here, but did VAR take another look at his collision with Alistair Johnson in the first half? Both players were booked, of course, for him.
Yeah, I think Diamondi was the aggressor at that moment in time. However, both players came together. I think it was a wee bit of bravado, probably more than anything. I think a yellow card for each player was correct at that moment in time. However, Diamondi probably pushed it a wee bit, continuing in the game. Was it a surprise that he was substituted, maybe to save him from himself? Possibly not. But I think John handled that well. But yeah, I think Diamondi did sort of push it to limits before Clement seen the better side to remove him from the field of play.
Well, that's right. I mean, there was an incident just before that substitution where Diamondi was complaining about being fouled. I think it was actually because he'd won the foul and been awarded the foul quite correctly. He seemed to be calling for one of the Celtic players to get a yellow card for it. That seemed to be the only reason that he could be protesting at that point. And he was actually quite brazen about the way that he was bawling at John Beaton. And I felt at that point, given the new sort of guidelines that have been put in for this season in terms of, what is it they call it? There's not...
football expectations.
Yeah, okay. Whatever that means. Aye, whatever that means. So, but you're not allowed, or you shouldn't be allowed to shirk the referee. Now, at that point, I thought he'd overstepped the line. I thought he was in serious danger at that point of getting a yellow card. And I'm pretty sure at that point that John Beaton had to pull over James Tavernier to have a word with him to maybe try and take the sting out of the situation. But I thought, under the letter of the law, that could easily be a second yellow.
It could have been. Absolutely. Could have been. But I think, again, John's managed the game within the game there. And he's probably spoken to James Tavernier and said, have a word. He's got nothing left. Which, again, is... and that's how you have to manage these volatile situations within these particular derbies.
Mm-hmm. No, see, I actually agree with that. Des, I think that's the right thing to do. Do take the sting out of it. But if you are presented with a edict or a new set of guidelines or rules from above which says if players are shouting at the referee, it's an automatic yellow card, no grey areas.
Well, well, there you go. You've got one game, you've got another game the next week, and I totally agree with you, Keith. I understand completely what you're saying, but how do you manage a situation? How do you manage a game? Because if you then go and react to a situation like that, what is the repercussions? And it shouldn't be that way. Absolutely, It should not be that way. But I think John done the right thing there.
Yeah, I mean, because if Diamandi gets the red card, then that opens a whole new can of worms, doesn't it? I guess, and that's what you guys are trying to avoid when you're out there.
Don't try to avoid anything. We just try to get the decisions right.
Oh,
not going to trip me up.
You don't like the headlines.
Absolutely not.
In terms of all the sort of decisions, then, do you agree with me? I couldn't really see anything other than that where you would say, you know, that there was an issue at all.
No. I think every caution that was given was justified. I thought the players allowed the game to go ahead. I thought John just managed it behind the scenes pretty much well. Thankfully, VAR didn't need to be called into play. So yeah, I don't think we can have any complaints with the match officials. They're not going to be talking about John Beaton tomorrow morning. They're just going to be talking about Celtic winning 3-0.
Yeah, and about the match itself, I mean, does it make it easier from an officiating point of view when it is as one-sided as that? I'm guessing that if it's more 50-50, a right proper tear-up, it can become a bit hairy, but does that help? Did that make an easier afternoon for the officials, the fact that Celtic were so far on top of Rangers?
Not really, because you've always got to be aware of the next challenge. You've always got to be aware. If you make a call on a foul, on an offside, on any infringement, the most important decision is the next one. So it doesn't matter for those whole 90 minutes plus added time. You've got to be on your mettle, and particularly under a game that's under scrutiny. I mean, we're not just watching this in Glasgow; we're watching this all around the world. So you've got to be under scrutiny the whole time. You've got to be under your own mettle. So it's 0-0, 3-0. You're still putting the same concentration and still the same effort into it.
Yeah, and I guess as well, when it does get to a situation like that, when players are losing the plot a little bit, and I think a few of the Rangers players did, we've seen it in previous derbies where when the game's getting away, somebody decides to just go and clatter into somebody, and I guess that can do you find it surprising that there wasn't even any sign of that from the Rangers players?
Listen, my coaching days are over, but I would like to have thought if it was one of my teams, you'd have a wee bit more about you, but not for a referee to comment. However, I will. I just thought Rangers lacked a bit of desire today. Not desire, just lacked a bit of quality.
I think you're right in both counts. I think it was desire and quality, because I think there was countless moments where you saw some of the body language from some of the Rangers players. I just don't know how much they fancied the fight. I think they started pretty well, but I think they get the fright of their lives when the disallowed goal was scored after 11 minutes. I think that rocked them back into their shells. And I saw no sign of them wanting to really engage from that point on, I felt they just totally capitulated.
Yeah, well, I was sat with my son, and watching the first 10 minutes, and he's like, "Wow, Rangers are all over us," and they were, absolutely were, and it was probably the first time for, well, at least since Clement came back in, Rangers were all over it, and Celtic actually had a wee bit of work to do at the back. I thought Rangers were great for the first 10 minutes, but as you quite rightly said, when that first goal got chopped off, they almost capitulated. They almost went, "Oh, right, this is what we're up against now."
Well, Gav, that was the thoughts of Des Roach. I don't think there's much you can disagree with there.
No, not at all. I even liked his insight into the coaching element of it, not just the refereeing. That was good.
Well, you've actually got a referee saying one of my teams were out there and taking a few bodies.
Exactly.
Right, well, look, that just about wraps it up, Gav. Give us your thoughts now for where this leaves the league season. Obviously, Aberdeen and Celtic battling out at the top. Rangers now looking for a top 6 finish.
A top 6. No, but in all seriousness, Keith, I mean, it is about where they go from here. We'll talk about that trip to Tannadice. The pressure getting into that game is going to be unbelievable. And look, there is a chance they could not even get second place. If the wheels really come off, and this is when Philip Clement, Philip Clement will find out about his players. We'll also find out about Philip Clement, because how they react is going to be fascinating. The same goes, as we said, for the Rangers board, who have given them this new deal. Their patience is going to be really tested. But there's just so many issues, and this is why it's going to become huge in the coming weeks and months. They don't have a chief executive, as we said. They need to address all of these issues. Just fundamental, there's something wrong with the whole structure. I think I remember speaking to Andy Newport at one point last season. I was talking to him and Scott McDermott on a Rangers podcast, and it was round about the time when the Rangers fans had a protest at Fir Park against Stuart Robertson and Ross Wilson. They all had the placards with the face and the arrow, the slash across their faces. And I remember saying to them, look, you know, when you don't have the money that Celtic have, you know, there's a bit of the rearranging the deck chairs here. It's just like, well, these two are going, well, let's get rid of them, and then they bring in.
Right about those two, to be fair.
Yeah, but James Bisgrove then comes in and he's the same. You know,
but that's the problem, isn't it? It's you identify the weak links, but you have to then upgrade them. And I think that's the question that we're going to find out with Rangers. In terms of the manager, is he an upgrade? CV would suggest so. The players that he's brought in, are they upgrades? Performances don't seem to suggest so. We'll need to see. But as ever, it'll all happen, and we'll be here to cover it every kick of the ball on Record Sport, in the newspaper and online. And you guys, thanks very much for watching, and feel free to add your comments, get involved in the debate. And thanks very much for you guys that have contributed tonight. Gav, I'm sure that you and I will have more to talk about tomorrow.
Thank you, Keith.
Cheers. Good night, everyone.
Good night.